at the underbridge of Lagos that had become a refuge for the forgotten. A young girl, barefoot and dusty, stood frozen on the sidewalk, holding a black nylon bag. Inside it was a steaming plate of jollof rice and a cold bottle of water, her first meal of the day. She hadn't taken a single bite. Then she heard a weak voice. "Please, I haven't eaten in 2 days." The voice came from a corner near the foot of a broken streetlight. It was rough and dry like sandpaper. She turned and saw him, a blind beggar, his eyes clouded white, sitting on torn cardboard, shaking slightly from hunger. Ella's lips trembled. The food was meant for her and her mother who hadn't eaten since yesterday, her mother who told her just that morning, "If you see someone in worse pain than you, give what you can, even if it's all you have." And now, her mother's voice echoed louder than the rumbling in her belly. She bent down. "Uncle, here, eat this, please." The man's hands found the bag and tore into the nylon. Within seconds, the jollof rice was gone. He drank the water in one long gulp, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Then, he did something unexpected. He smiled, turned in her direction, and whispered, "Thank you, young lady. You don't know what you've just done." Ella blinked. What did he mean? "Can you take me to your mother?" he asked calmly, wiping his palms against his faded trousers. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Earlier that day, before this moment, Ella's day had begun like all the others in struggle. She awoke, curled beside her mother, on a flattened carton under the bridge, her stomach already groaning with emptiness. Their tiny bag of clothes was clutched tightly in her mother's arms, the only belongings they had left since the fire consumed their roadside provision shop 2 months ago. That fire was never explained. One day they had a life, and the next, they were under the bridge. Helen, a woman of great dignity despite her torn wrapper and worn slippers, had never stopped believing in kindness. She raised Ella on principles, even in poverty. "Don't ever curse this life," she would say, tightening the scarf on her head. "We're alive, and while we breathe, we fight with love." It was a strange thing to speak of love while sleeping beside sewage and shivering through the night. But Ella believed her. At 10 years old, Ella had stopped going to school. Her books were ashes, and her classroom had become the streets. She spent most days begging. Not aggressively, she had manners. Helen taught her to smile and say, "Good afternoon, Ma. Please help me eat." That day, she stood near a popular roadside buka, watching customers walk in and out. Her eyes darted between plates of rice and the money-exchanging hands. A middle-aged woman in a blue Ankara gown noticed her. "Are you hungry?" she asked. Ella nodded shyly. "Wait here." The woman disappeared and returned with a hot plate of jollof rice and a cold bottle of water. "Here, eat and be safe," she said, handing it to Ella. "Thank you, Ma." Ella beamed, tears pricking her eyes. Clutching the food like treasure, she turned and began the walk back to the underbridge to share it with her mother. Then came the blind man, and everything changed. "Why do you want to see my mother?" Ella asked as they walked slowly through the narrow pathway behind a mechanic's shop. She supported the man's elbow gently, helping him avoid potholes. "I just want to meet the woman who raised you," he said, his voice oddly calm. "People like you don't just happen. You're taught." When they reached the abandoned house with the leaking zinc roof, Helen was seated on a wooden stool, mending Ella's only gown with a needle and thread. She looked up as they approached. "Ella, who is this man?" "He was hungry, Mama. I gave him the food." Helen's eyes widened, then filled with pride, not anger. She stood up slowly and offered the man her stool. "You must be tired. Please sit," she said softly. "Thank you," the man replied, lowering himself down. He turned his head slightly toward her. "You raised her well." "She's all I have," Helen whispered. There was a long silence. Then the man reached into his back pocket and brought out something strange, a small folded card. He handed it to Ella. "Read this." Ella unfolded it. It was a business card. She squinted. "Mr. Jonathan Adebayo, CEO, Adebayo Holdings." She blinked. Her heart skipped. Helen reached over, took the card, and gasped. "No, this can't be real," she muttered. "Adebayo Holdings? The billionaire company?" Mr. Jonathan smiled faintly. "I lost my sight 5 years ago in an accident, but I didn't lose my purpose. Since then, I go out from time to time disguised as a beggar, not because I need food, but to find hearts like yours, people who still give when they have nothing." Ella's jaw dropped. Helen's knees gave way, and she dropped to the floor. "No, no, this is a dream," she whispered. "It's not. And today, I found who I've been looking for." He stood slowly, reaching for his phone in his pocket. "I'll send my driver now. I want you both to come with me." "To where?" Ella asked, still trembling. He smiled. "Home." As they waited beside the broken gate, a sleek black SUV pulled up, its tinted windows rolling down to reveal a uniformed chauffeur. The moment Helen and Ella stepped into the car, Mr. Jonathan made a call. "Yes. Tell the staff to prepare the guest wing. And please call the principal of Grace International School. We have a special student to register tomorrow." Ella looked up from her seat, eyes wide. "Me?" Mr. Jonathan nodded, smiling gently. "It's time your dreams started." But just as the car pulled into the main road, a black van slowly began following them from a distance unnoticed. As the black SUV weaved through the busy streets of Lagos, Ella sat quietly beside Mr. Jonathan. The CEO turned blind beggar, who had just turned her world upside down. Her fingers were clenched tightly around her mother's hand, as if letting go would wake her from a dream. Everything felt unreal. The cold air of the car's AC, the soft seats, the scent of expensive leather, and the surreal truth about the man seated just beside her. Helen, too, sat in stunned silence, her lips moving in prayer. Her eyes were fixed on the road, though her thoughts were racing elsewhere. Could this really be happening? But behind them, the black van kept its slow, steady pace, always just out of sight. The SUV pulled up in front of a massive estate in Ikoyi. Towering white gates slowly swung open to reveal a mansion that looked like something out of a movie. Polished marble pillars, manicured gardens, and a driveway lit with warm, golden lights stretched as far as Ella could see. "Welcome to your new home," Mr. Jonathan said, as the chauffeur stepped out and opened their door. Ella couldn't move. Her legs felt like jelly. She glanced at her mother, whose eyes had welled up with silent tears. "I haven't walked through a gate in months," Helen whispered. A young woman in a tailored suit approached them with a bright smile. "Good evening, sir. I'm Clara, the household manager. Everything is ready." Mr. Jonathan turned toward Ella. "Clara will show you your rooms. Freshen up. Dinner will be served in 30 minutes. I'll join you shortly." Ella nodded, still speechless. Their new bedroom was nothing like the leaking, abandoned house they had been calling home. Cream-colored walls, soft velvet curtains, a sparkling chandelier, and a bed big enough to fit 4 people. Ella tiptoed into the bathroom, and when she saw the gleaming bathtub and fluffy towels, she gasped. "Mama, is this really for us?" Helen wrapped her in a hug. "It is, my child. I don't know how, but it is." Just then, there was a knock on the door. Clara stepped in with 2 shopping bags. "Miss Ella, I brought something special for you." Inside were new clothes, shoes, and a shiny backpack. "You're starting school tomorrow," Clara said. "Grace International. Full scholarship. The principal already confirmed your admission." Ella's hands trembled as she picked up the backpack. "I'm going back to school?" Clara smiled. "You're not just going back. You're going to thrive." Later that night, after dinner, a 3-course meal served in a glass dining room overlooking a lit garden, Mr. Jonathan invited them to sit with him in the lounge. The room smelled of aged wood and cologne. Paintings lined the walls, trophies from humanitarian work, charity awards, and certificates framed in gold hung proudly on one side. "I wasn't always like this," Mr. Jonathan said, sitting on a velvet couch, Kane resting beside him. "I was once a cold businessman, focused on profit and power. But 5 years ago, a fire just like the one that took your shop changed my life." Helen's eyes widened. "My wife and daughter died in it," I survived, but I lost my sight. I lost everything that made life worth it. Ella's hand crept into her mother's, squeezing tightly. I went into hiding, not because I was afraid, but because I needed to understand suffering. I needed to find people who hadn't lost their humanity despite having nothing. He turned his blind eyes toward Ella. And today, I found that person. There was silence. Then he turned to Helen. Ma, you did something powerful. You raised a child who still gives, even when she has nothing. That kind of heart can change the world. Helen choked on a sob. I want to help you both rebuild, not as charity, but because the world needs more Ellas. The following day, Ella wore her new uniform with pride. She couldn't stop twirling in front of the mirror. Her hair had been braided neatly. Her shoes clicked proudly on the marble floor as she walked with Clara to the waiting car. Helen watched with teary eyes, standing beside Mr. Jonathan, who leaned on his cane. You've given me back my child's future, she said quietly. I only uncovered it, he replied. But just as the gates opened to let the school car out, the same black van from the night before crept to a stop 2 streets away. A man in a faded jacket lit a cigarette and picked up a phone. She's here, he said. The girl and the mother. And the old man's blind as a bat. A voice on the other end of the line responded, Good. Keep eyes on them. Don't act yet. We'll take them when the time is right. Ella's first day at Grade International School was like walking into a new world. The classrooms had air conditioning. The walls were decorated with paintings and inspirational quotes. Students wore clean uniforms and spoke with big dreams in their eyes. But Ella was determined not to feel small. When her teacher asked, What do you want to be when you grow up? She stood up and said proudly, A medical doctor. So I can help sick people, like my mama helped me. There was a moment of silence. Then the class erupted in claps. But someone was watching even here, a janitor who wasn't really a janitor. He watched Ella from a distance, a small earpiece hidden beneath his cap. She's fitting in quickly, he muttered. Better move faster. Mr. Jonathan sat with Clara and his lawyer later that evening. I want Helen to have ownership of one of our mini-marts, he said. Set it up for her with full staff. Let her manage it if she wants, or just earn from it. And prepare a trust for Ella's education up to medical school. Clara nodded, her eyes shining. Sir, this will change their lives forever. It already has, he whispered. But just as he stood to return to his room, his cane bumped into a small camera that wasn't there before. He picked it up, frowning. Clara, get me security. Now. As night fell, and Ella lay asleep in her new room, dreaming of white coats and stethoscopes, a shadowy figure scaled the outer fence of the estate. Silently, swiftly. In the back room, Clara gasped as security played the CCTV footage backward. There's a breach, the guard said. And the last frame? A masked figure standing at the back door, holding a syringe. The mansion was wrapped in an eerie silence. Outside, the trees swayed softly in the night wind. But inside the estate, alarm bells were quietly ringing only, not the kind that made noise. Inside the security room, Clara leaned over the monitor, her hands trembling slightly. The masked figure in the last frame was still paused on the screen, the syringe in hand glowing faintly under the night camera's infrared. Who is this? She demanded, her voice sharp. We don't know yet, the chief guard replied. No one's broken into the estate in over 5 years. But whoever this is, they knew where to enter. The back gate's motion sensors were disabled manually. Clara's stomach twisted. She picked up her phone and dialed Mr. Jonathan's emergency number. Meanwhile, in her room, Ella turned in her sleep, unaware of the danger, just a few meters from her window. Her dreams were peaceful. She was wearing a white doctor's coat, walking through a hospital hallway. Children smiled at her. Her mother stood behind her, clapping. Then, suddenly, the dream shifted. The walls went dark. Her mother disappeared. A faceless man in a mask stepped forward. Ella jolted awake. She looked around the dark room, breathing heavily. And then, there was a knock. A single, soft knock on the glass window. She froze. Another knock. This time, Louder. She tiptoed toward the curtain and pulled it aside just an inch but saw no one. "Ella?" a voice whispered. She gasped. It wasn't her mother. It wasn't Clara. It wasn't anyone she knew. The doorknob to her room started to turn, but before it could open, there was a loud sound. The security alarm blared. Red lights flashed across the hallway. From the estate's intercom, a calm yet firm voice echoed through every room. "Lockdown initiated. All residents remain in your rooms." Mr. Jonathan stood in his hallway, clutching his cane tightly. Clara rushed toward him. "Sir, we have an intruder inside." They were near Ella's room. "Is she safe?" he asked quickly. "We believe so. The guards are closing in. Butts or someone on your staff had to help them in. This wasn't a random break-in." Mr. Jonathan's lips tightened. "It started again," he muttered. "What do you mean?" He turned to her, his blind eyes still intense. "Someone out there doesn't want me to help Ella, or her mother." Later, as the police arrived and began their search, Ella and her mother were escorted to a secured guest room. Mr. Jonathan joined them soon after, guided gently by Clara. "I'm so sorry," he said to them both. "Who would do this?" Helen asked, wrapping her arms tightly around her daughter. "I've made enemies over the years," he said quietly. "People who don't like that I give money away, that I help the poor." He turned slightly toward them. "But now I believe this wasn't just about me. It was about you. About Ella." Helen's eyes widened. "Why would anyone want to harm us?" "I don't know yet. But I will find out. And I will protect you. No matter the cost." The next morning, a security officer found something strange in the estate garden, a pendant. Old, rusted, but clearly expensive. On its back was a name carved in small cursive letters, Iamide. When Clara showed it to Mr. Jonathan, his face stiffened. "I know this name." He sat down slowly. "Iamide was once a staff member here. Years ago, a brilliant young man. I sponsored his education, just like Ella's." "What happened to him?" Clara asked. "He disappeared one night, stole millions from our charity fund and vanished." "But why would he come back now?" Clara asked. "Maybe he never left." Despite the chaos, Mr. Jonathan insisted Ella attend school. "We can't let fear take your dreams away," he told her. She nodded bravely and got into the school car, this time with 2 security escorts following behind. Her day started well. She made 2 new friends, Simi and Joshua, who showed her around and made her feel welcome. They laughed together in the cafeteria, and for the first time in months, Ella felt like a child again. Until she found the note. It was slipped into her locker. "Stay away from the old man, or the next time, your mother won't wake up." She froze, hands trembling. She rushed to the teacher and gave her the note. The principal was called. Clara was notified. By afternoon, Ella was pulled from school and rushed home under full guard. Mr. Jonathan met her at the door. "They're watching us closely," he said. "This is no longer just about kindness. This is a war against hope." That night, as tension thickened in the mansion, Mr. Jonathan called Helen to his private study. "I need to ask, is there anything in your past we should know about?" Helen hesitated. Then she nodded. "Years ago, before I met Ella's father, I worked as a secretary in a company that was involved in shady dealings. When I found out and tried to report it, I was framed and fired. One of the men behind it was named." She paused, trembling. "Iamide." Mr. Jonathan's cane dropped from his hand. "Helen, that's the same man." Just then, an urgent knock came to the door. A guard burst in. "Sir, Ma, someone broke into the school. Ella's name was scratched onto the chalkboard with red paint." "What?" "Sir, that's not all. They left a message." He handed Clara a picture. On it was a photo of Ella in school that day, surrounded by 2 smiling friends. But one of them, Joshua, had been circled in red marker. And behind the circle, someone had written in dripping ink, "She will give everything," just like before. The mansion was no longer a place of peace. It had become a fortress. Security cameras buzzed. Dogs barked. Every exit and entry point was now manned by uniformed guards. Inside, Helen sat quietly in the corner of the living room, her arms wrapped tightly around Ella, who trembled despite the warm throw blanket around her. She will give everything, just like before. That message haunted them both. And worse, Joshua, the cheerful, kind boy Ella had just met, was the one circled. But why? Mr. Jonathan sat silently in his armchair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Though blind, his instincts were sharper than most men with sight. His mind was racing. "I don't believe in coincidences," he said finally. "If Iamide is behind this, then someone inside is working with him. Someone very close." Clara walked into the room holding her tablet. "Sir, we've reviewed the school's security footage." "Play it," Mr. Jonathan said firmly. She turned the screen toward him, even though he couldn't see. Ella leaned in. What she saw made her stomach drop. It was footage from earlier that day, Joshua walking into the school before the bell rang. But he wasn't alone. A tall man in a hoodie handed him a small envelope. They spoke for barely a second. Joshua nodded, tucked the envelope in his bag, and went inside. Helen covered her mouth. "He's working with them?" Ella's voice cracked. "Not necessarily," Clara replied. "He might have been threatened, or manipulated. We don't know yet. But we will," Mr. Jonathan said, rising slowly with his cane. "Clara, prepare a car. I want to meet this boy's parents." They arrived at Joshua's neighborhood, run-down section of mainland Lagos, where streetlights barely worked and electricity blinked like candle flames. When they knocked on the wooden door of his house, a woman answered, her eyes sunken, her shoulders weary. "Good evening," Clara began gently. "We're here to talk about your son, Joshua." The woman hesitated, then stepped aside. "Please come in." Their small room was cluttered with buckets, clothes, and a tiny kerosene stove in the corner. Joshua sat on a stool, head bowed. When he saw Ella, his face paled. "I didn't know," he said before anyone spoke. "I didn't know they would hurt you." "Then why?" Ella whispered. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. "They told me they'd pay for my mother's surgery. She's dying. We have no money. They said if I gave you that note and passed your schedule to them, they'd help us. I didn't want to." "But—" Ella's heart softened, but her fear did not. "Who gave you the message?" Mr. Jonathan asked gently. Joshua hesitated. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a business card, burnt around the edges. Clara's face drained of color. "That's one of the shell companies Iomide used years ago. It was shut down. At least we thought." Mr. Jonathan stood still, his face a mask of quiet fury. "Clara, prepare the car. We're paying Iamide a visit." They tracked the address on the card to an old warehouse near the Apapa port. It looked abandoned, cracked windows, rusted gates, weeds swallowing the driveway. But when they got close, the guard dogs barked. "This isn't just storage," Mr. Jonathan said. "It's a base." Security surrounded the warehouse. Inside, rows of computers buzzed softly. Fake documents, identity cards, accounts, charity scams. And at the far end, Iamide, a tall man in a suit without a tie, smirking behind a desk. "Well, well," he said, standing slowly. "The blind billionaire finally found me." Mr. Jonathan's grip on his cane tightened. "Why are you targeting Helen and her daughter?" Iamide chuckled. "Oh, come now, John. You, of all people, should know the answer, because she tried to destroy me. And now, I'll destroy her hope." "She didn't destroy you," Jonathan replied, voice low. "You destroyed yourself. You stole from people who trusted you. You ran from your shame. And now I'm going to expose you," Clara said, stepping forward with her phone recording. But Iamide only smiled wider. "You think this ends with a video? I've already planted what I needed, and when I press this," he lifted a small remote, "your precious Ella becomes history." Clara lunged forward, grabbing the remote, wresting it from his hand, just in time. Guards rushed in. Iamide was pinned to the floor, shouting threats no one listened to anymore. As the police handcuffed him and dragged him away, Mr. Jonathan turned toward the window. "She must never know how close she came to dying," he said quietly. Clara nodded. I'll make sure of it." Back home, Ella was waiting at the gate when the car pulled in. She ran into her mother's arms as Mr. Jonathan stepped out, tired but smiling. "Everything is going to be okay now," he said gently. Ella looked up at him. "Is it over?" "Almost." He knelt slightly, his hands resting on her shoulders. "You've been through more than most children your age, and yet you still chose kindness. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you powerful." She nodded, her eyes glistening. And it's time the world saw that power. He turned to Clara. "Let's begin her foundation." That night, under the soft light of the moon, a press conference was held in the garden of Mr. Jonathan's estate. News reporters lined the hedges. Cameras flashed, microphones extended. Mr. Jonathan, wearing his signature black suit and sunglasses, stood beside Ella and Helen. "I present to you," he announced, "the Ella Foundation, dedicated to helping homeless children get access to food, shelter, and education. Inspired by a little girl who gave her last meal to someone in greater need." Applause echoed, but far away, in a dark cell, Iamide sat on a bench, whispering to a guard. "They think it's over," he hissed, "but they haven't met the real people I work for." The sun rose over Lagos like a promise, golden rays cutting through the morning haze and resting gently on the mansion's rooftop. Birds chirped over marble balconies and polished windows, as inside excitement buzzed through the halls. Today was the day. Today, Ella was officially becoming more than just a survivor. She was becoming a symbol of hope. Downstairs in the dining hall, Helen adjusted Ella's collar, smoothing out her crisp new shirt. The 10-year-old beamed in her green and white school uniform, the insignia of Grade International Academy now proudly stitched across her chest. "Does it look okay, Mama?" she asked, spinning once with giddy excitement. Helen chuckled softly, eyes damp. "You look like everything I ever prayed for." Clara entered with a big smile. "Car's ready, but there's someone who wants to speak with you first." As they turned toward the hallway, Mr. Jonathan appeared, dressed in a traditional agbada, a calm smile on his face. Though his eyes were blind, he somehow always looked like he could still see every moment clearly. "I have something to give you," he said, handing Ella a small velvet box. She opened it slowly and gasped. Inside was a silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a stethoscope. "For the doctor you are going to become," he said. "Wear it. Remember it. You're going to change lives." Ella threw her arms around him, eyes welling. "Thank you for believing in me." "I didn't have to," he replied, kneeling gently. "You believed in yourself first, when you gave away your last meal." At the school gate, the press had gathered again this time to cover Ella's official enrollment. Reporters flashed cameras as Clara gave a brief speech. "She's not just a student," Clara told the cameras. "She's a story, proof that compassion still exists in the world." Inside the school, Ella was taken to the principal's office, where an unexpected surprise awaited her. A scholarship letter, not just for primary or secondary education. "Your future is secured," the principal said kindly. "Now go. Make something great of it." As Ella skipped down the hallway, clutching the letter like treasure, she stopped at the library window. Her reflection stared back at her, a girl who once begged under bridges now walking the halls of one of the best schools in Lagos. She whispered to herself, "I will heal people, just like I was healed." Meanwhile, back at the estate, Helen received a surprise of her own. Mr. Jonathan stood beside a man in a suit, holding a folder. "Helen, I've officially signed over ownership of one of my neighborhood mini-marts to you. It's yours. Staff, inventory, salary, everything." Helen dropped to her knees. "Two don't even know how to manage a business anymore," she said, shaking. "You won't be doing it alone," Clara said. "We've hired a manager to run the day. Today. You'll be guided every step of the way. All you need to do is believe in yourself again." Tears poured down her cheeks. "Thank you for restoring not just my daughter's future, but my dignity." Later that week, in a maximum security facility outside Lagos, Iomide sat in a visitor's room, wrists cuffed to the table. But he wasn't alone. A man in a white kaftan entered, and sat across from him, face hidden behind dark glasses. He placed a thick envelope on the table. "We warned you not to go after the girl," the man said coldly. "I didn't know she was protected like that. You exposed our network. The warehouse was shut down. Our people are fleeing." "I can fix it," Iomide begged. "I can get close again, just let me out." The man stood, buttoned his coat, and leaned in. "You're done. The plan moves forward without you." And then he walked away, leaving Iomide alone, betrayed by the very system he helped build. 6 years later, the hall at Luth Teaching Hospital was packed with clapping families, proud parents, and glowing graduates in white coats. Among them stood a young woman, taller now, glowing with confidence. Ella Helen Adeyemi, top of her class, best in pediatrics, and youngest speaker at the ceremony. As she stepped onto the stage to give her speech, she scanned the front row and saw Mr. Jonathan, older now, but still proud. Helen sat beside him, well-dressed and smiling, a successful businesswoman in her own right. Ella took the microphone. "6 years ago," she began, "I was a homeless girl who gave her only meal to a blind beggar. I didn't do it expecting anything in return. I did it because my mother taught me that no matter how little we have, someone always needs it more." She paused as the room went quiet. "That man turned out to be a billionaire, but I wasn't changed by his money. I was changed by his belief in me. And today, I stand here not just as a doctor, but as a living example of what kindness, faith, and second chances can do." Thunderous applause filled the room. Outside, as the graduates posed for photos, Ella walked up to Mr. Jonathan. She wrapped her arms around him. "You gave me tomorrow," she said softly. He smiled. "And you gave me a reason to believe again." They stood there for a moment. Two people, brought together by a plate of rice, and as the sun dipped behind the Lagos skyline, Ella turned to the future, her stethoscope glinting in the golden light, ready to change the world, one healed heart at a time. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. The sun was harsh that afternoon in Lagos, but what shattered Jonathan had nothing to do with the heat. He stood in the center of his living room, empty. Everything was gone. The TV, the dining table, the couch, even the flower vase he bought during his first wedding anniversary. He stared at the silence, confused. "Amara?" he called. "Mimi? Mara?" No answer. The twins should have been back from school by now, giggling like they always did, fighting over who got to hug Daddy first. But the house was empty. Then he saw it. A white paper lying on the floor near the front door. He bent down, picked it up, and read. "I'm sorry, Jonathan. I had to go. My conscience wouldn't let me stay. I cheated on you. Mimi and Mara are not your daughters. I can't continue living a lie. I'm taking the properties because I suffered with you to build all of it. Please, take care of yourself. Amara." The room spun. He dropped the paper. His legs gave out. He sank to the ground, breathing hard, as if someone had just punched the air out of his lungs. But no, this was worse than a punch. This was a bullet through his chest. "No, no," he whispered, shaking his head, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Not my Amara, not my girls." His mind raced with memories, how she held his hands during their toughest days, how they laughed during the twins' 5th birthday, how she once told him, "Even if we lose everything, I'll never leave you." Now, she was gone, and so were the children he raised like his own. The pain didn't come all at once. It started like a numbness in his chest. Then a storm. He screamed. He smashed the photo frame on the wall. He pulled down the curtains. He wept until there were no more tears. That night, Jonathan sat in the corner of his empty home with just one baggy's old work bag filled with auto repair tools. The tools that built his life. The same tools that now meant nothing to him. And for the next 2 months, that bag was all he had staying at Oshodi under bridge. Dirty, crowded, loud. But it was his home now. Jonathan didn't care about the noise, or the smell, or the people who stared at him with pity. His hair grew wild, his beard tangled like a forest, his clothes were stained and torn. He hadn't changed them in weeks. The once famous automobile engineer, the same man whose garage once fixed the governor's SUV, was now just another shadow among the forgotten. People whispered, "Isn't that Jonathan, the car genius?" Some still tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't answer. He just sat in silence, clutching his tool bag like it was the last piece of his broken heart. What no one knew was this: Jonathan's hands still remembered. His brain still worked. His heart was still good. He had lost everything, but not his skill. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. The Lagos highway was hot, and the air smelled of burnt tires and diesel. Traffic stretched for miles. Honks, yells, sweat. Jonathan walked slowly by the roadside, dragging his bag like a lifeline. Then he saw her. A black Bentley was parked awkwardly on the shoulder, its hazard lights blinking. A young woman, dressed in a clean white blazer and heels, was trying desperately to restart the engine. She looked frustrated, worried. She checked her wristwatch again and again. Her face was covered in sweat, but she still looked elegant. Jonathan watched for a second. Something in him stirred. He stepped forward quietly and spoke. "I can help you fix it." The woman looked up, startled. Before her stood a man who looked like he hadn't bathed in days. His shirt was ripped. His trousers hung loosely on his bony frame. His eyes, though tired, were calm. The woman hesitated. Who are you?" "My name is Jonathan," he replied simply. "I was an automobile engineer. I still am." She blinked. Her mind raced. She had a board meeting in 45 minutes, one that could change everything for her company. She nodded slowly. "If you mess it up, I'll call security." Jonathan didn't reply. He just dropped to his knees, opened his tool bag, and got to work. He checked the engine, touched the battery, tightened a loose cable, and adjusted a few wires. Then he stood up and said, "Try it now." The woman slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Her mouth fell open. "What?" Jonathan dusted his hands and stepped back. She jumped out of the car, stunned. "How did you do that? Who are you really?" Jonathan gave a tired smile. Then he told her everything. He told her about Amara, about the letter, about the twins, about the months of silence, the pain, the shame, about Oshodi Bridge, about losing the will to live. The woman listened, frozen. Her name was Monica Johnson. She didn't say much at first. She just kept staring at him, this broken man who, despite everything, still chose to help a stranger. What Jonathan didn't know was this: Monica was no ordinary woman. She was the CEO of Bright Future Technology Zone of Africa's top tech companies. A billionaire, a genius, a woman raised by one of Nigeria's wealthiest men. Her apps were used by children in rural schools. Her tech helped the police track criminals using call data. She was a powerhouse. And here she was, saved by a homeless man. Her throat tightened. She blinked back tears. "I want to do something for you," she said softly. Before Jonathan could speak, she had already picked up her phone. "Come with me." He hesitated. She smiled gently. "Trust me, this is just the beginning." Jonathan sat quietly in the back seat of the Bentley, his hands resting on his knees. The cool air from the AC felt like a shock to his skin. It had been weeks, no, months since he had felt cold air like this, or sat on anything this soft. Monica glanced at him. He looked lost, a man holding himself together by a thread. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Jonathan nodded slowly, eyes fixed outside the window as the busy streets of Lagos rushed past them. Soon, they turned off the main road, entered a gated estate with armed security, and pulled into a driveway paved with smooth marble stone. The gates slid open automatically, revealing a mansion so large and beautiful it almost didn't feel real. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. Was this where she lived? He stepped out carefully, afraid to touch anything. His worn-out shoes made no sound on the shiny floor. The marble stairs, the fountains, the manicured flower sit felt like walking inside a dream. "Come," Monica said, smiling. "We'll get you cleaned up first." The barber shop smelled of mint and clean towels. Monica sat nearby, watching as the barber carefully trimmed Jonathan's tangled beard, then worked on his overgrown hair. The man in the mirror began to change before her eyes. Gone was the wild, broken stranger from under the bridge. Now, a clean-shaven, sharp-looking man with strong features stared back. His eyes, still tired, had a spark, a memory of who he used to be. After the haircut, Monica handed him a fresh outfit, dark jeans, a crisp blue shirt, black sneakers. Jonathan changed in the restroom. When he stepped out, Monica blinked. He looked completely different. "You clean up nicely," she said, trying not to smile too wide. Jonathan chuckled shyly. "I haven't worn new clothes in months." She drove him back to her mansion, and together they entered the house. The living room was massive. Glass walls stretched to the ceiling, revealing a view of the Lagos skyline. Gold-trimmed furniture, glowing light fixtures, and artwork lined the walls. Monica led him to the guest room, larger than any room he had ever lived in. "You can rest here," she said. Jonathan hesitated. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Monica paused at the door, turned to him, and said, "Because you were kind enough to help me today when I needed it most. And I believe no one should be forgotten, just because life broke them." The next morning, Monica took Jonathan to her company's headquarters in Victoria Island. The building stood tall and proud, with tinted glass windows that reflected the sun. Inside, employees moved with purpose, typing, talking, running meetings. Everyone greeted Monica with respect. She was young, but her presence commanded attention. In her private office, Monica handed him a folder. "What's this?" Jonathan asked. "A plan," she replied. "I want to invest in you. We're going to open the best automobile engineering workshop in Lagos, and you'll run it." Jonathan's eyes widened. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," she interrupted. "You didn't ask me for anything, and that says everything about who you are." He looked down at the papers. His hands shook. He hadn't held anything official in months. Monica leaned forward. "I know what it's like to lose someone. I lost my father when I was 16. He believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. I want to do that for someone else now." Jonathan swallowed hard. A knot tightened in his throat. "Thank you," he whispered. She smiled warmly. "You've got work to do, Mr. Jonathan." Over the next few weeks, Monica made arrangements. She brought in lawyers, business developers, and even leased a beautiful space on the mainland. The garage was state-of-the-art brand-new equipment, solar backup, a waiting lounge with Wi-Fi and coffee. Jonathan's name was on the door. People were curious at first. Who was this quiet, serious man opening a new auto center? But soon, whispers turned into praises. "This guy fixed my Lexus in 15 minutes. He repaired what 5 mechanics couldn't fix. Jonathan, that man is a genius." Within 2 months, J&M Autotech became the most talked-about workshop in Lagos. And Monica, she came every evening, sometimes just to check on him, sometimes just to sit and talk. She would ask about engines, gears, wires, things she had no business knowing. But she liked to listen, and he liked to talk to her. One evening, Monica invited him to the rooftop of her mansion. The sun had dipped below the skyline, and the stars had started to appear. They sat quietly, sipping juice. The wind was gentle. Lagos twinkled below them like a sea of light. "Do you ever think about your daughters?" Monica asked softly. Jonathan nodded. "Every day. I wonder if they still remember me." "You were a good father," she said. "Still are." He turned to look at her. "And you saved me." Monica looked away, embarrassed. "You saved yourself. I just reminded you who you are." The silence grew deep, charged. Monica opened her mouth to say something, but words failed her. Jonathan took a breath. "Monica?" "Yes?" But before he could continue, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. He stared at it for a second, then answered. There was silence on the line. Then a shaky voice whispered, "Jonathan, it's me, Amara." His heart stopped. Monica's eyes widened as she watched his face go pale. I need help. Amara's voice trembled. Please. I have no one else to turn to. The girls, Mimi and Mara, they need you. Jonathan stood frozen, the phone still at his ear. Where are you? He asked quietly. Her answer was barely a whisper. Outside your gate. Jonathan stood by the door, motionless. The phone was still pressed against his ear, even though the call had ended. Outside his gate, his hands trembled slightly. For months, he had dreamed of this moment, feared it, begged for it, and now it was happening. Amara, the woman who tore his world apart, the woman who stole his joy, his daughters, his peace. He turned slowly toward Monica, who was watching him with gentle eyes. She's outside, he said in a voice that didn't sound like his own. Amara, with the girls. Without a word, Monica rose from her seat and walked toward the elevator. Let's go, she said calmly. I'll come with you. The mansion gates opened slowly, revealing the shadows just beyond the warm pool of light spilling onto the driveway. A weak figure stepped into view barefoot, thin, her wrapper barely tied around her waist. Her eyes were sunken, her lips cracked, her hair untamed. It was Amara. She looked nothing like the woman Jonathan had once loved, the woman who had captivated people with her beauty and grace, the woman strangers used to call Miss Nigeria. That version of Amara was gone. Behind her, clutching each other's hands, were two little girls, 7 years old now, Mimi and Mara. Their faces were tired, their clothes dusty, their cheeks streaked with dry tears. But their eyes still held the same light. The moment they saw Jonathan, the silence shattered. "Daddy!" they both screamed. They ran, no hesitation, no fear, just tiny feet slapping against the pavement. Jonathan dropped to his knees and opened his arms, just in time to catch them. They crashed into him, sobbing, holding him tight, their small hands clinging to his shirt like it was the only thing keeping them safe. "I missed you," Mimi cried. "I thought you forgot us," Mara whispered. Jonathan didn't speak. He just held them. His chest rose and fell with shaky breaths. His hands trembled as he stroked their hair. Monica stood a few steps behind, watching silently. Then, slowly, Jonathan raised his head and looked at Amara. She stood with her head bowed, not daring to meet his gaze. "Come inside," he said, surprising even himself. Inside the living room, Monica handed the girls juice and warm food, and led them to a guest room where they could rest. The girls hesitated to leave their father, but he reassured them with a smile and a gentle nod. Then it was just Jonathan, Amara, and Monica in the room. The silence was heavy. Amara sat on the edge of a sofa, her hands trembling. Her once proud shoulders were hunched. She looked like a woman who had carried guilt for far too long. "I didn't come to beg for a second chance," she said softly. "I know I don't deserve it." Jonathan remained silent. "I only want you to know the truth," she continued, her voice shaking. "The man I ran off with, he told me he had proof that the twins weren't yours. He showed me a DNA result." Jonathan's brows furrowed. "It was fake," she said bitterly. "I didn't know until it was too late. After 2 years, he told me the girls weren't his either, that he forged the test to break us apart, to punish me for choosing you over him years ago." Tears slid down her cheeks. "He kicked us out, took the money, left us with nothing. I've been going from place to place, until I remembered you once told me you'd never stop loving the girls, even if the world turned against you." Jonathan leaned back slowly, his jaw clenched. The pain he had buried deep inside, years of betrayal, confusion, loneliness, came rushing back like a wave crashing against the shore. "And the letter?" he asked, his voice low. "You said they weren't mine." "I believed him," she whispered. "I truly did. My guilt ate me alive, and I wanted to punish myself, to vanish and carry the shame." Monica watched from the side, her heart aching for Jonathan. He had finally found his footing again, found peace, found purpose, and now the past had walked right through his front gate. Amara wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. I just need help. Not for me, but for them." The girls deserve a future. She looked up at Monica then. I didn't know you were with someone. I just wanted to see him one last time, to ask if he could help give the girls a better life. Monica didn't speak. She only looked at Jonathan. He rose slowly and walked toward the window, his back to them. The silence stretched on. Then, finally, he turned around. I will take care of them, he said firmly. They are my daughters. Nothing will change that. Amara nodded tearfully. But I cannot bring you back into my life as a wife, he continued. That door is closed. I understand. He paused, then reached into his wallet and brought out his checkbook. He wrote quietly, then tore the check and handed it to her. 2 million naira. It's enough to start over. A small business. A place to sleep. Amara stared at the check, her mouth open. Jonathan, I don't know what to say. Say thank you, Monica said gently, stepping forward, her voice kind but firm. And make sure you never make him regret this. Amara stood, held the check close to her chest, and knelt down. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for your kindness. Monica helped her up and opened the door. You can rest for tonight, she said. But tomorrow, we'll help you find a place. Amara nodded silently and stepped out. Later that night, Monica found Jonathan sitting alone on the rooftop again. She joined him quietly and placed a glass of juice in front of him. Are you okay? She asked. He took a deep breath. I don't know. It still feels like a dream. But seeing my girls again, it makes everything else fade. Monica smiled. They love you deeply. That never changed. He turned to look at her. Thank you, Monica, for helping me even when I had nothing, for giving me space to grow again. She smiled gently, then leaned closer. There's something I've wanted to say for a long time. He looked at her. She hesitated, then whispered, I love you, Jonathan. But before she could say anything more, Jonathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. He opened it slowly, revealing a simple but elegant ring. I love you even more, he said, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you proud. Tears welled in Monica's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Jonathan. They embraced tightly, the Lagos skyline twinkling around them like a celebration. But deep in the quiet of the night, another knock was about to shake their world again. The knock was soft at first, barely noticeable. Jonathan and Monica were still on the rooftop, wrapped in the kind of quiet that only follows a deep confession of love. The stars blinked above them, the night air calm and filled with promise. Monica rested her head on Jonathan's shoulder, her hand gently brushing against his. Then the knock came again, more urgent. They both turned their heads toward the stairway, leading back down to the main floor. Jonathan stood up slowly. I'll check, he said, his voice cautious. He made his way down the spiral stairs, through the hallway, and toward the front door. Monica followed behind, unsure why her heart had started to race again. When Jonathan opened the door, a man stood there, tall, slim, clean-shaven, sharp jaw. He looked like he had money, the kind of person who didn't wait long for answers. He wore a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled, and a gold chain shimmered faintly around his neck. Good evening, the man said smoothly. Is Amara here? Jonathan's heart dropped. Monica stepped forward slowly. Who are you? The man smiled without warmth. My name is Maxwell. I know Amara. Are you the one she ran away with? Jonathan asked, his voice low and steady. Maxwell tilted his head slightly. That's not really important anymore, is it? I just came to make sure she's not spreading lies. Monica narrowed her eyes. Lies? Yes, Maxwell said casually. She's been walking around telling people I faked a DNA test, that I took her money and left her with nothing. None of that is true. She's just bitter because things didn't work out. Jonathan took a step forward, his jaw tightening. You destroyed her. You lied to her. You took her away from her family. And now you want to rewrite the story? Maxwell chuckled. She made her own choices. Don't make me the villain. You are the villain, Monica said sharply. "And you're not welcome here." Maxwell held up his hands. "Relax. I'm not here to start drama. I just wanted to be sure she doesn't drag my name through the mud." Just then, Amara appeared at the end of the hallway, holding Mimi and Mara's hands. The girls froze the moment they saw Maxwell. Amara's face drained of color. "I told you never to come near me again," she said quietly, her voice shaking. Maxwell raised his eyebrows. "I thought you'd be a bit more grateful. You wanted to start over, didn't you? I gave you that chance." "You destroyed my life," she snapped. "You showed me a fake DNA test to steal me from my husband. You tricked me into leaving everything behind. And when I had nothing left to give, you threw us out." The girls gripped her hands tighter. Maxwell's tone shifted, colder now. "Careful, Amara. I know things too. Things that could damage your precious reputation even more." Monica stepped in front of him. "Leave. Now." Maxwell looked around at everyone in the room, his eyes calculating. Then, with a shrug, he turned and walked away. But just before the gate closed behind him, he turned and said, "Enjoy your happy ending, Jonathan. Just know that not every story stays perfect forever." That night, after the tension settled, Jonathan sat in the girls' room, watching them sleep. Mimi had curled up close to Mara, both of them holding onto the same teddy bear Monica had given them when they arrived. He had missed 5 years of their lives, 5 birthdays, hundreds of hugs and good nights. But they were here now, safe. Behind him, Monica walked in with a blanket. "You've been sitting here a long time." Jonathan nodded. "I'm afraid." She knelt beside him. "Of what?" "That they'll wake up and disappear again, that all this," he motioned around the room, "is just a dream, that I'll go back to the bridge and find out I imagined it all." Monica reached for his hand and squeezed it. "This is real, Jonathan. You're not alone anymore." He looked at her. "Even with Maxwell showing up?" "I'm not scared of men like him," she said. "He had power once. But you have purpose." Jonathan smiled faintly. "I love you, Monica," she smiled back. "And I love you." 3 months later, Lagos buzzed with news of the wedding between Jonathan and Monica Johnson, the tech billionaire, and the once homeless engineer, who now owned one of the biggest automobile workshops in the city. Their wedding was simple but elegant. Not a flashy show, but a celebration of second chances, healing, and love. Amara sat quietly in the front row, dressed in a simple gown. She had opened a boutique with the money Jonathan gave her, and had finally started piecing her life back together. She didn't smile much, but her eyes followed every moment of the ceremony. Mimi and Mara served as flower girls. Their laughter echoed through the hall as they tossed petals down the aisle, glowing with happiness. And Monica wore a fitted white gown that shimmered like the stars. Her veil was simple, her smile radiant. As she walked toward Jonathan, hand in hand with the twins, there wasn't a single dry eye in the room. Even Amara wiped a tear. A year later, baby Obinna was born. He had Jonathan's deep eyes and Monica's curious smile. The whole house seemed to come alive. Again jiggles, toys, baby bottles, and lullabies filled every corner. Monica became more than a CEO. She became a mother of 3. And Jonathan, once a man broken by betrayal, was now a father, husband, and one of the most respected business owners in Lagos. People traveled from far places to visit J.M. Autotech. And sometimes, while Monica hosted conferences and tech expos, Jonathan would be under a car hood with grease on his hands, teaching young apprentices the magic of engines. But one afternoon, as Monica flipped through old photographs in her home office, a strange email landed in her inbox. Subject: confidential information regarding Maxwell and the forged DNA. Results. She opened it. Her eyes widened. Attached were scanned, documents real, DNA results, voice recordings, evidence. The twins were, in fact, biologically Jonathan's all along. Monica's heart raced. She stood up and ran to find Jonathan. When he read the email, he sat back in stunned silence. "So he knew," Jonathan said slowly. "Even back then, he knew they were mine, and still lied. Monica touched his hand. What will you do? Jonathan looked out the window at the garden, where Mimi, Mara, and baby Obinna were playing. I already got everything I ever needed, he said. The truth is just a bonus. But Monica could see something flicker in his eyes, something unresolved. And as the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long shadows across the house, there came another knock at the gate. The knock echoed softly through the hallway. Jonathan and Monica stood frozen in the doorway of the study, the open email still glowing on Monica's laptop screen. The truth was, Mimi and Mara had always been his biological daughters. The pain he endured, the years lost, the heartbreak of it had been built on a lie. But now, this knock. Monica looked toward the front door. You don't think... I don't know, Jonathan said quietly. But let's find out. They walked side by side, slowly, as if afraid the truth waiting outside might be heavier than the one they had just uncovered. When Jonathan opened the door, he wasn't met with Maxwell's smug grin or Amara's tearful eyes. Instead, a young woman stood there, dressed in a navy blue jacket, with a press badge clipped to her lapel. Good afternoon, she said softly. My name is Fola. I'm a journalist with The Guardian Nigeria. I apologize for coming to your home unannounced, but I believe your story deserves to be heard. Jonathan blinked. My story? Yes, Fola replied. The story of how a homeless man helped a billionaire woman with a broken car and changed both their lives. How that man went from sleeping under a Oshodi Bridge to owning the most successful auto workshop in Lagos. How he became a father again, a husband, and a symbol of hope. Monica and Jonathan exchanged a surprised glance. We didn't go public with any of that, Monica said carefully. I know, Fola said. But someone anonymously sent us your wedding video and details about the garage. I've done my research. What you've both built, the lives you've touched. It's not just inspiring, it's transformative. Jonathan hesitated. Why now? Fola stepped forward slightly. Because Nigeria needs real stories. Not just celebrity gossip or political scandals. We need stories that remind people that even after deep pain, there's still healing. That even after betrayal, there's still kindness. Your story could give thousands of people hope. Monica glanced at Jonathan, who seemed lost in thought. Then he said, Come back tomorrow. Let us think about it. Fola nodded respectfully. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, I'll be in touch. As she walked away, Jonathan closed the door slowly and looked at Monica. You think we should do it? She smiled. I think the world needs more Jonathans. The next morning, Monica found herself watching from the window as Jonathan tied a small apron around baby Obinna and lifted him gently onto the table in the garden. Mimi and Mara sat cross-legged on the grass, laughing as their little brother dipped his fingers into colored paint and smacked them against paper. It was art day, one of their new family traditions. Amara had moved into her own apartment in Lekki and had grown her boutique into a successful fashion store. She occasionally visited and kept her distance, respecting the new life Jonathan had built with Monica. The wounds hadn't completely healed, but there was peace, now no bitterness, just gratitude. At lunchtime, Monica sat with Mimi and Mara, helping them cut vegetables while Jonathan grilled meat outside. Mummy Monica, Mimi said, can I ask you something? Monica smiled. She still melted every time they called her that. Of course. Did you ever feel lonely before you met Daddy? Monica paused for a second, caught off guard by the question. Yes, sweetheart. I did. Even with all your money? Mara added. Monica chuckled softly. Especially with the money. You can have a lot and still feel empty. But then, your daddy showed up, and so did both of you. You filled my life with love. The girls beamed, and Monica pulled them both into a warm hug. I love you both. Like I gave birth to you, she whispered, and I always will. A week later, the story broke. The Guardian published the feature under the title, From Broken Engines to Healing Hearts, the man who fixed more than just cars. It went viral. TV stations picked it up. Influencers reposted it. Magazines called it Nigeria's most heartfelt redemption story. Radio stations invited Jonathan for interviews. NGOs reached out, offering to sponsor training centers for young mechanics under Jonathan's mentorship. Monica's inbox was flooded, but what surprised them the most was the letter that came by mail. Handwritten, no stamp, just folded neatly in an envelope. Jonathan opened it carefully. It read, "Dear Jonathan, I was one of your former apprentices, Amika. You may not remember me, but I never forgot you. You taught me more than fixing cars. You taught me humility, discipline, and kindness. I was on the verge of joining a gang when you gave me my first job. That job changed my life. I heard what happened to you. I wept. But seeing what you've become now, I have hope again. Thank you for living your truth, even when life tried to destroy you. May your days be long. You are a light. Forever grateful, Emeka." Jonathan folded the letter and held it against his chest. "This," he whispered, "this is why I survived." 2 years later, Mimi and Mara graduated from university, both with degrees in medicine. They stood side by side, proud and glowing in their white coats. Jonathan sat in the front row with Monica and little Abina, who clapped louder than anyone in the hall. During the graduation dinner, Amara approached Monica quietly. "Thank you," she said, voice sincere, "for loving them like your own." Monica nodded. "They are my own. I'll never forgive myself," Amara said, eyes lowering. "You don't have to," Monica replied softly. "Just keep becoming better for them." A year after that, the wedding came. Mimi and Mara had fallen in love with 2 young doctors they met during their internships. In a twist of fate, the sisters insisted on a joint wedding, double trouble wedding, they called it. On that bright Saturday morning, guests filled the flower-lined garden of the Johnson estate. There were strings of fairy lights hanging between trees, musicians playing soft Igbo love songs, and laughter in the air. But nothing was more emotional than the moment Jonathan and Monica each took a daughter's hand and began walking them down the aisle. Mimi turned to her father, her eyes glassy. "Thank you, Daddy." "For what?" he whispered. "For not giving up." On the other side, Mara looked at Monica. "And thank you for being the mum who showed up when we needed one the most." Monica squeezed her hand. "Always." At the end of the aisle, Amara watched them dressed in a simple green lace gown, holding a bouquet of yellow roses. She smiled through tears. Her heart ached, but it also healed. She had lost a man who always chose kindness over revenge, and he had turned pain into purpose. That night, after the music faded and the last guest left, Jonathan and Monica stood together under the stars again, just like the night he had proposed. Now older, stronger, at peace. "Life came full circle," Monica whispered. Jonathan looked up at the stars, then down at her. "And somehow, we're still standing." Monica rested her head on his chest. Together. And this time, there was no knock at the door, no running, just love, just family, just home. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.